Most of us have at least once used a plastic bag. These plastic bags end up in the ocean, where they never really decompose. These pollutants are harmful to animals and degrade our waters. In short, plastic pollution is a major problem. Some have chosen to regulate or ban the use of plastic bags in grocery stores, while others make bags out of a biodegradable or reusable material. But there needs to be a new change or a new idea. For instance, I decided to make bags out of kelp or seaweed. The main idea is that the bags are free to end up wherever they want, especially the ocean, where the kelp already resides. The process of creating a new idea, more or less an invention, is not an easy one. You're essentially bringing something new into the world, a brainchild, and since it has never been there yet, a multitude of things can go wrong. My experience was typical of an enthusiastic inventor. Stage 1. An idea is never yours unless you know no one has done it yet. After research, I found that people have made a variety of things out of seaweed, including my mentor, Julia Lohman. She lives in London, where she has made sculptures, lamps, and pieces of clothing out of seaweed. I found a great deal of things, yet no one had made seaweed bags. Stage 2. Everything went impeccably in the beginning. I was doing a ton of research and finding answers. The seaweed looked flawless. I happened to be visiting London at the perfect time to meet up with my mentor, and I was having fun experimenting to extract glycerin from vegetable oil, the substance I used to preserve the seaweed, in the chemistry lab. Stage 3. However, after the first month or two, I had multiple blunders and started to see how my creation was not being well introduced into the world. My idea was not as clever and conceivable as I thought it was. The first instance of the world trying to hint at me that I should stop trying happened on my way to meet my mentor in London. As I was rushing out the door, I quickly stuffed a few pieces of kelp into my suitcase. I was only really thinking about where we were going, so I was surprised when I was stopped at airport security. We were all alarmed because we didn't know why, and I ended up being pulled into a separate room to get the full pat-down. Turns out, upon conference with my mentor the next day, that this same thing has happened to her more than once. I had on my hand some glycerin residue from packing the strips last minute, and apparently it is used in high concentration in balms. The second warning from the world came after coming home and lifting the paper towels off of my hand-stitched work on the kelp to find mold. Honestly, with the slimy and damp aspect of seaweed, I can't believe I didn't see that one coming. And finally, the way I was stitching the strips together was not working, and so basically everything I had already done was ripping. This is the point in which the inventor decides that their invention was never in existence because it never should have been in existence. The world doesn't like it, and that's why it can't be created. This is also the point where no one should ever stop. It may seem, as it did for me, like you're just making things worse by building this thing. For the longest time, I thought I liked kelp and that it wasn't that bad. I told myself, you could deal with the smell. But for the longest time after that, I became repulsed by it. Stage 4. Time to continue on. I thought back to meeting my mentor in London. We met up at Central St. Martin's Design School, where the college students were setting up displays for their senior projects. Before the main conversation, Julia showed me each project with its combination of science, art, satire, and activism. These projects were so fascinating and thought-provoking that they motivated me to resume with mine. I therefore started to experiment with ways to protect the kelp from mold and relayed my findings to my mentor. I enlisted the help of others and learned that I needed to be more meticulous. My dad helped deal with the mold, Sean Cook told me to put salt on the outside of the kelp, and Miss Mo suggested a sewing machine. So the salt worked, the reason being that the outside stays dry, while the inside of the kelp stays just the way you want it. I essentially used way too much salt because I was scarred from the mold and paranoid towards anything wet. This progressive idea was the answer to my problems, although it did lead to many laborious nights with my dad scraping salt off of the kelp. Stage 5. Okay. I was in the home stretch, but I was honestly just exhausted with it all. The kelp was different, but still malleable, so I basically had to accept a few things in order to finish. The bag still has salt on the outside that comes off on your hands a little. I'm not too good at sewing, so there are a few rips, and it can't really carry anything too heavy. For example, light boxes of cereal. All of this to get what you see here. It's not a very nice clean-cut product, but that's usually what you get the first time around with creating something. Stage 6. I start to think of different prototypes. What I have here today is acceptable, but it's not the best it can be, so I'm learning to be optimistic about the future. I could try to find larger sheets of kelp so I don't have to sew as much. I could definitely use less salt, and I could try to incorporate other organic materials to help with the structural integrity. With this large database of improvement ideas, I am more confident that I can continue this project in the future. Altogether, I knew that I wanted to construct something and to try to incorporate chemistry. Through my experience, I found that I have a love-hate relationship with the design process, but ultimately I enjoy the hard work and research that goes into putting together something. The challenge didn't necessarily change. I knew that developing something new would be difficult. I just didn't know how many things would go wrong. But the most important part of all of this is my realization in my project's change and impact. I went into this a little overambitious, as all young creators do. I thought I was going to be mass producing these bags and possibly have people using them. I was going to sell them to get some revenue that I would then donate to ocean cleanup charities. Clearly, this didn't happen, and the only real impact that my project has had on others is stench, irritation, and airport investigation. But I realize now the actual impact of my project is having my idea out there to inspire others to innovate in any way possible. Similar to the way that those projects in London influenced me. Such inspiration is something that happens with inventing things. The thought comes about when you see what others have created. The thought that you can be original too and can generate something with your own hands. Innovation can be complicated and scary, but the key is to stay perseverant in the process. This is also true for things other than innovating and making things. Perseverance is a universal trait that everyone needs to employ. With any challenge, whether it be school, a job, or self-actualization, stay determined and always look forward. Thank you.